Welcome back, everybody, to the Fantasy Brothers podcast. I've got a quick announcement to make before we hop into the episode. Number one, we've got something really exciting to bring to you. We are going to do a rookie draft kit, a dynasty kit, whatever you want to call it. Over the next couple weeks, we'll be working on that and releasing it. It will be on Patreon. And we're also looking at some ways to have that available for you if you just want to do a one-time purchase for it. It's going to have profiles of all the relevant rookies coming in, some mock drafts, and a whole lot of information that should help you attack your rookie drafts in your dynasty leagues and even in your startup drafts as you're getting things going next year in fantasy football. Also, my audio in this episode does not sound super great. You'll love it when this happens. I think my recording software recorded my AirPods instead of a microphone. So that is incredible. So my audio won't sound quite as polished, put together as it normally would. But I think it's still good enough that we're going to release the episode and crack into it with the top 12 dynasty running backs. This episode is a blast. We had a lot of fun doing it. So that'll do it for me. Let's hop into the episode with Ben.
This is a football podcast, man. Meat, football, good. Man, we talk football. We eat burgers.
Welcome back to the Fantasy Brothers podcast. Josh Johnson, Ben Watts in the driver's seat with you. We're talking fantasy football. We're in good moods. We are in dynasty season. It's
officially, it's happening. We're here.
It's my favorite time to be podcasting. I know we've done a full season of in-season content. We've also done a full season of off-season content. I'm a big fan of the dynasty content. I'm not gonna lie to you.
This was, well, I guess you keep going, first of all.
I mean, we got a great episode today. What we're doing is we're diving into our top 12s at all the fun positions. We did this a year ago.
I was going to say, this was the first episode we did.
Yeah.
Was top 12 dynasty running backs.
So what I'm going to do is I'm going to link that episode, and each time we go through a position, I'm going to link the episode from a year ago, just so if you want to go back and listen to them and just kind of see where things were in the dynasty landscape a year ago, you can do that. But also things have changed dramatically, and those rankings are going to look quite a bit different right now. We're probably
I was looking back at some of them, and we look really stupid. For instance, I'm pretty sure that Antonio Gibson was a top 5 running back.
He was not top 5. He was number 6, I think, in those rankings a year ago. It was not good. That one didn't age well. None of these will age poorly today, though. These will all be bangers.
We've had an off season. We're like NFL quarterbacks. Okay, the first season you usually just ignore it. They're getting their feet under us. Now we got it.
Yeah,
it's under control now.
We got it rolling now. Before we hop into all that, obviously we had the final game of the year on Sunday. We had the Super Bowl, so we're going to hop into that. We got some news to look at as well. But Super Bowl Sunday was this past Sunday. I'm sure everybody's listened to all kinds of talk about the Super Bowl.
We're a little late to the party.
Yeah, we're a little bit late, but you know what? It was an amazing Super Bowl, and we got fantastic quarterback play from both quarterbacks. I had a blast watching it. And we hadn't talked about it yet. So I figured now was a good chance to kind of decompose, whatever that word is, where you talk about things that happened already.
Decompress.
That was it. That's the one.
That's what you were looking for?
Yep. Decompress. Almost said decompose.
Yep. Spoiler alert. I'm still smarter than Josh.
Doesn't take I
guess first, congratulations to Patrick Mahomes, the Chiefs. Patrick is inching his way ever closer. I mean, he's, this has been a big conversation, since the Super Bowl. Like, everybody's like, well, where's Patrick Mahomes all time? I don't want to get into it because it's so many arguments about it right now, but he's inching his way ever closer to the top spot. 27 years old, 2 Super Bowls, 2 MVPs, 2 Super Bowl MVPs. I mean, I don't know what else you want me to say about Patrick Mahomes. He's the gold standard right now in the NFL.
He's incredible. He's so incredible. And I think the narrative helped him out in this Super Bowl run too, because, I mean, he gets the high ankle sprain, and then not only does he play well, he probably plays some of his best games in his career on the ankle sprain. That scramble at the end of the game, that was the most ridiculous play I'd ever seen.
He only threw for like 180 yards. I mean, 3 touchdowns, and obviously the huge, big time. He had 2 scrambles, I think, that were big, 20-plus yard scrambles.
Yeah.
They scored every single time. They had the ball in the second half. That's what you want your all-time great quarterback to do.
Yep.
The call wasn't my favorite call. You probably know that.
Yeah.
But if you want to argue the Bengals game, I'll argue that game with you all day long. But this one, no, they shouldn't have called it. Technically, it was the right call. No matter what happens, the Chiefs still kick a field goal if they make the call or not. It just sucks to me that Jalen Hurts didn't get a chance to respond, because he would have gotten the ball back with 1 minute and 20-something seconds left, I think.
Yeah, I think what I've realized about that call is nobody's necessarily mad that the call was made. What people were mad about is the ramifications of the call being made, and the ramifications are Jalen Hurts didn't get the chance to win the game at the end of the game. And that's basically what it came down to.
Because this was, I mean, still could be one of the all-time great Super Bowls. I mean, both number 1 seeds. They had both exact amount of points scored, same amount of points scored during the season. They had the same record, all this kind of stuff. They had both at 6 Pro Bowlers. Like, everything was storybook. The NFL script writers killing it with that game.
Yeah. They're earning their paychecks this year.
Yes. And, it played out 35-38. And I texted you too, like, after that call, the excitement from the whole stadium was just gone at the end. Like, even during the team celebration, it was just it was quiet. And I don't know, that sucked to me. And was it the right call? Yes, but it was one of the cleanest games you'll see. They hadn't been making that call all game. Like, I think you've got to let him play in that scenario. I don't think Juju would have caught the ball anyway. Mahomes threw it like 10 yards away from him.
Yeah.
So, but either way,
it was a great game. And, I think the result was one that I felt was really fitting. I was kind of hoping that Mahomes would get himself another one, just because I know he is, like, I know how good he is, and I want his accomplishments to kind of line up with that at the end of his career. And you only get so many chances at Super Bowls. So I kind of I would love for him to be in the Brady conversation when he retires. Obviously, I think he will be too. He's just got to win. He's got to basically get to a threshold of Super Bowl wins for people even to have that conversation. You have like the Michael Jordan, LeBron James debate. It always comes down to rings. And I think that's going to be the case with Brady and Mahomes. And so it was cool to see Mahomes getting there. He's 27. He's got 2 Super Bowls. He's been to, 5 AFC championships in all 5 years. That's ridiculous.
All at home.
That's absolutely ridiculous.
I think this will finally shut up the people like me who are making the Joe Burrow argument. He's put some separation between him and Burrow now. I think if Burrow had beaten him and won this, they'd be dead even. Right now, there's a little bit of separation. Will he catch him? I don't know. We'll see. I love Burrow, but for now, Mahomes is easily the best quarterback in the league and one of the best of all time as we speak right now. Yeah.
A couple other things to get into here. Derek Carr was officially cut by the Raiders, I think, yesterday.
He waived the no trade, or I don't know what the terminology is, but he basically said he can't trade me. Yeah.
Yeah, he said he wasn't going to basically approve any trades. Yeah. And so
I heard they worked something out with the Saints.
Yeah. Yeah, the Saints had apparently gotten like the baseline trade offer in, and the Raiders were okay with it, so they let him talk to the Saints. And I'm sure he can still go to the Saints, but I think Derek Carr just reserved his right to choose where he went. And so he said, don't trade me, don't bother. So they cut him,
If we
is,
don't
I think, what everybody wanted.
Lamar Jackson, come to Atlanta, Derek. Throw the ball to number 8, Kyle Pitts, over and over and over.
I think that whole division is going to be in the Derek Carr running. I think the favorites, as I've seen them right now, like on Vegas, Carolina seems to be a favorite. The Saints, obviously, the Jets, the Falcons are in there. But for whatever reason, I don't see the Falcons popping up as one of the favorites to land it.
I don't know. We'll see. If we cannot go trade for Lamar Jackson, I mean, he's perfect for us, but we'll see.
We'll see what ends up going down with that. Both of the Eagles coordinators were hired away as head coaches. Shane Steichen, the offensive coordinator, was hired by the Colts. Jonathan Gannon, the DC, was hired by the Cardinals. I think personally, these are the yin and the yang hires here. I think Steichen's a great hire. Gannon is very meh.
Yeah, you and I both agree there, I think.
Yeah, so like on the Colts side of this, I think Steichen is a great hire. What they did with that offense this past year, I mean, it was electric. It was basically unstoppable. And some of that is obviously due to the personnel, but like it went from a good offense to a phenomenal offense.
I mean, he had Herbert his rookie year. You saw what he did with him, and he was in in San Diego in 2014, Phillip Rivers years. So he has a long history of success.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think with the Colts, they are probably going to draft a quarterback early.
Yeah.
And so for Steichen to be there developing a young quarterback, I think it's going to be great for the Colts organization. They're pretty well run for the most part.
And they've got good personnel on that team.
Yeah, they're pretty much a quarterback away. They have been for the past however long. They need a receiver. They obviously need a quarterback. They could probably use another corner, but
shocking. We're going to talk about Jonathan Taylor later.
I know.
He's a top 12 dynasty back. What do you want me to tell you?
Yeah, he will be in there for sure. For the Cardinals, it's a little bit different. The Cardinals cupboard is bare.
I don't know if I like this hire.
I think if you're the Cardinals, you wanted to get somebody who was going to develop Kyler Murray. If I'm them,
it's not going to be Gannon.
No, it really depends on who he brings in on his staff. For them, if I was a Cardinals fan, I wanted Sean Payton. I would have wanted Steichen, and I think I would have been okay with D'Amico Ryans just because I think with his connections to offensive assistants, that like the guys that they hired on that staff for the Texans, I think are great. And by all accounts, Ryans is a phenomenal coach.
Yeah.
Gannon to me felt like an upstart where he was getting interviews because of team success. Like Steichen, I heard his name popping up a bunch even before the Super Bowl run. Jonathan Gannon, I hadn't heard of him at all prior to Super Bowl week. And then he gets the job with the Cardinals. So I don't know. It just doesn't feel like the ideal hire if you're a Cardinals fan.
Yeah, I think, and I'm not trying to knock Jonathan Gannon too much. Like he had one of the best defenses in the league this year. Obviously that's great. However, he has incredible personnel on that defense. And also you look at the schedule, and I think honestly the best quarterback he played was Dak Prescott all season until he faced Patrick Mahomes, and you saw what happened. So obviously it's Patrick Mahomes. I can't knock him too bad. But when you don't play, you're playing subpar competition most of the season with excellent personnel. Yeah, you're going to look really good.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, he had a phenomenal roster on defense. I mean, and you got like Hall of Famers everywhere.
Fletcher,
you got Darius
Cox,
Slay
you
at corner.
All those guys.
Yeah. The D-line, the corners, the linebackers.
The Dominican Sue, I mean.
Yeah, he's got players everywhere. It's the same thing with the offense, but I think with Steichen, you saw like –
You've seen him do it in more than one situation.
Yeah, and there was a development where you had good personnel last year, minus A.J. Brown, but the offensive line was there last year. The running game was there last year. Devonta Smith was there last year. Goddard was there last year. Jalen Hurts was there last year. But basically, they added a X receiver. Granted, A.J. Brown is maybe one of the 5 best receivers in football, so that's going to open things up. But you added one player, and your offense went from 15th in the league to like 3 instantly. And I think that's not just A.J. Brown. That's also play calling.
Yeah.
So the moment I've all been waiting for, the top 12 dynasty running backs. I am incredibly excited to hop into
Part
this.
2.
So here's how we did this. We each put a list together of our personal top 12 guys, and then we combined them. So what we're going to do is a cumulative list. We're going to also have a couple honorable mentions outside of the top 12 guys that are kind of on that fringe and could hop in there depending on how some things go. Obviously, this is basically a way too early list because we haven't had the benefit of free agency in the draft. So these are subject to a lot of change.
We will probably update this on Patreon and stuff like that when we start sending stuff out. This will be updated with draft, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. And I guess another announcement, we are doing a rookie dynasty kit this year. So a couple of these guys that are going to be mentioned in here, we do have a couple rookies here. They are going to have full player profiles in this rookie draft kit. We're also going to have a 3-round mock draft for Superflex for 1 quarterback leagues to kind of give you a gauge for where these players are probably going to go, where we think they should be going, and kind of gauge some of that value. But let's hop into our top 12 dynasty running backs. Ben, lead us off.
We've already mentioned his name once. At least for now, I guess first of all, we should mention we did this in tiers. And the top tier is 3 guys. We got it leading off with Jonathan Taylor. The other 2 guys are it's almost negligible difference, but I think we still should put Jonathan Taylor at number 1. He is 24 years old. He just turned 24 years old. Happy late birthday, Jonathan Taylor. He's still behind an elite offensive line. And his situation is more than likely going to be better than it was this year. Matt Ryan is not going to be his quarterback. We just talked about Steichen as the new head coach hire. He's an offensive guy. We've seen him have an incredible running offense in Philly. And yeah, he's better than Miles Sanders, guys. And not to mention, they're going to have a new quarterback. It's going to be hard to be worse than Matt Ryan was this year, even if it's a rookie. Imagine, Bryce Young or CJ Stroud, whichever one you prefer. They're going to be really good, I think. So the situation is going to be better. And Jonathan Taylor, it was just an unlucky season. It was not Taylor was bad. He was in a bad offense. He was injured in and out throughout the entire season. Some people may be down on him. I'm not. This hasn't really soured my opinion of Jonathan Taylor. I think he is still phenomenal.
Yeah, Taylor he's a bit of a throwback. We've talked in previous episodes that the bell cow running back is kind of fading away from fantasy football. You've got a couple guys. You still got him. You still got Derrick Henry in there. But like Frank Gore's career arc is not really a thing anymore in football.
Doesn't happen.
Yeah, everybody's moving towards committees. And so when you're looking, you want a guy that's either going to catch passes or be a bell cow. And Jonathan Taylor is a bell cow. Now, he doesn't really catch passes the way you would love him to do. I mean, you want him to have more than like 45 targets.
Yeah. I think even in this bad year, he had 40 this year.
Yeah, I mean, he gets enough. I'm not saying he doesn't get targeted at all. He gets enough, but it's not like to where you are, I guess, touting the fact that he catches passes. He catches enough passes to get by, but he's not really a pass-catching running back by any sense of the word. He is a workhorse running back. He's going to get 300-plus carries if he stays healthy. He's probably going to run for 1,300-plus rushing yards, and you just hope he scores a lot of touchdowns. And for that to happen, you just need a competent offense. And the offense this past year was terrible, and so it didn't really let him succeed, I guess, the way you would hope. The other 2 guys in this tier for me, I think could very easily jump Jonathan Taylor, sort of depending on a couple things.
I think us, one definitely will.
Yeah, I think for us,
maybe both.
We got Breece Hall at 2. And I personally think Breece Hall will jump Jonathan Taylor and be the RB1 in Dynasty. But because he's coming off an ACL tear, I can't really put him there. Jonathan Taylor, as of right now, is healthy. And, we know what he is. Breece Hall, I think we know what he is, but we only got a 6-game sample size.
Yeah.
Granted, he had 600 plus yards in that 6-game sample. He had 200 plus receiving yards in that 6-game sample. He was electric. He averaged 16.4 fantasy points in half PPR in the games he played last year. So he was incredible. I mean, he was looking like one of the 5 best running backs in football in a really condensed stretch. Obviously, you would want to see him play a full year, but my God, he was good in the games he played last year. He was like Jonathan Taylor is more of a volume, and just like, if you think about the year he was the RB1, he had like 1 billion red zone carries. He was just always around the goal line. He had more goal line touches than like anybody else in football by like 15. I mean, it was just ridiculous, the amount of scoring opportunities he had.
I want to say the next best guy had like 20 something red zone carries, and I think he had like 45 or something ridiculous.
It was stupid. With Breece Hall, you see juice that I don't necessarily think Jonathan Taylor has. He was ripping off 60-yard, 80-yard plays.
He's got that juice. He still does.
Taylor's got juice.
Even after he came back after a long stretch, he popped off a 60-yard touchdown where he just ran away from the defense. He's still got it.
Don't hear what I'm not saying. I'm not saying he doesn't.
I'm hearing what you're not saying.
I think Breece has more juice, personally.
Breece right now is 21 years old.
Good God.
I think he'll be 21, or maybe he turns 22 during the season, but he's 21 right now. He just can drink.
He's ridiculous. He also, for those worried about the ACL injury, obviously not ideal, but it was a clean ACL tear. There was not other ligament damage in there. So that it's not the end of the world. I don't necessarily think we're going to see him finish as the RB1 next year. But I do think that he will certainly be in that RB1 overall conversation a year from now. So I think next year he's probably in that like 5 to 10 range. And then the year following, I'm expecting he's the number 1 running back in fantasy, personally.
Yeah, I think assuming there's no setbacks, he's good to go for training camp, stuff like that. He's going to be pushing my top 5 backs in 2023.
Yeah. Reports are that he's going to be good to go for training camp, but obviously everybody says that. So who knows?
Everyone's ahead of schedule for an ACL these days.
Everyone. So number 3, he has yet to play a snap in the NFL, and Bijan Robinson.
You can guess who this is. This is you said when we said one guy will jump. You were thinking Breece Hall. I think it's very quickly going to be Bijan is going to be the RB1 in Dynasty RB1. Very quickly, he will take that spot.
I'm not going to say you're crazy, because he checks every single box that you could possibly ask a running back prospect to check. He's Saquon Barkley. That's what he is. We said that about Breece Hall a year ago, and I like Bijan better as a prospect than I did Breece Hall. He's probably going to get drafted in the first round. He's got, let's just rattle off a couple of these things. So when we're trying to figure out a running back, how they're going to translate to the NFL, I personally look at a few statistics in college to kind of figure out how they're going to translate. And Ben, if you have other ones to add, feel free to do that. But for me, I'm looking at BMI, their 40 time, their college target share, and their projected draft capital.
Yeah.
So BMI, I'm looking at a 30 plus BMI. And that to me just says they can take a baseline workload, and they could be a workhorse. If they're 30 or above, or like around 30, they can handle a 3-down workload. Bijan 29.8 BMI, good enough for me. Speed, he projects to run a 4.4. A 4.4 is right in that sweet spot. You want him to, if he runs faster, that'd be great. I want him to run under a 4.5. If he is like a 4.4,
I think he'll do that.
5, that's great.
He's not, and this is not me trying to like knock Bijan. I don't think he's got the true breakaway speed that some of those other guys. I'm guessing he'll probably be 4.49, something like that. High 4.4, but I mean, that's splitting hairs.
Yeah, I think if you're under 4.5, that's kind of like my perfect kind of sweet spot.
He's quicker than fast, but you can see that as a plus sometimes.
And like the thing with so like you remember a couple years ago when Javonte Williams was coming out and everybody was talking about forced missed tackles and like his contact balance, whatever.
Oh, Javonte was ridiculous.
It was stupid.
He was a bowling ball.
Bijan this past year was number 1 in forced missed tackles per run. He was number 1. He did. He was breaking like what was it? 4 tackles or no? I don't remember exactly what the number was. He was number 1 in all of college football.
It was over 100
forced missed tackles per rush. It was stupid. And if you watch his tape, I mean, there's runs where there is no hole and he makes 3 guys miss, gets to the second level, gets a 15-yard run. And it's like, how the freak did that happen?
He does.
Normal guys don't do that.
Jonathan Taylor, I think, was one of the best prospects. Maybe one of the best prospects ever. And he can do – that's why he and Saquon – I think he and Saquon enter a tier alone because they can do things that even Taylor can. This isn't saying like Taylor can't, but when Jonathan Taylor hits a hole and there's a linebacker or 2 there, he can make 1 miss, but he's not going to make 2 miss. I mean, Bijan Robinson and Saquon Barkley can both lose 2-3 guys in a hole and make something out of completely nothing.
Yeah, it's absurd. So there's that. Plus, his receiving production was very, very good in college. He had 295 and 315 yards receiving his last 2 years. He also had a cool 39 rushing touchdowns his last 2 years in college as well. So he produces. And there was a lot of arguments. Exactly. I mean, he checks everything. And I know everybody who is kind of tapped into Dynasty fantasy football, we've know the value of Bijan. Years. We've been knowing since his freshman year. He had 1,000 yards his rookie year in college, and we've been knowing since then this dude is special, and he's lived up to the billing. He's going to be incredible.
And I'm not going to get a single share of him.
No, you're not.
I'm not going to get a single one.
Oh, geez. The value of Bijan is so high that there's a lot of arguments to be made that you should sell it just because everybody knows how good he is. And he's incredibly valuable. So he's at 3 for us right now. His
bust chance is so incredibly low, but on the off chance he does bust.
Right. So that is tier number 1. Go ahead and hit us with the first guy in tier number 2.
Tier number 2, we had kind of not an argument, but a discussion on, which one of these guys we should have here. And I think we kind of agreed Kenneth Walker is at 4 for us. Athletically, Kenneth Walker is more or less identical to Breece Hall. He doesn't have the same receiving pedigree that Breece does, but he has shown flashes of being able to catch the ball just fine. He has the same speed. He's just as big as Breece Hall. Not necessarily saying he is better or worse, but I mean, my gosh, he's phenomenal. He's 22 years old. The offense, I think, can get better. The whole situation as a whole in Seattle can get better. Yeah. They have a top 5 pick, or is it top 6? I don't know. Doesn't matter. The offense was great as it is with Geno Smith. Yeah, I mean, the only knock on Kenneth Walker is his receiving workload, but his rushing production kind of negates that, I think. He's more of the Jonathan Taylor cut of back.
Yes. Yeah, so he basically didn't get a start until week 6 this past year. First 5 weeks, you can kind of, I mean, he played, but he was not getting much in the way of workload. I mean,
we kind of expected that with him, though.
We did. But we said as soon as he was the guy, and we figured it was going to be this year when they let go of Rashad Penny, as soon as he was the guy, he was going to be incredible. Well, he was. And if you were to kind of extrapolate his production and kind of add on that production to the first 6 weeks of the year, you're looking at a guy who's running for 1,500 yards. He averaged 4.6 a carry. He had 9 touchdowns. He is Nick Chubb. I mean, that's the comp for Kenneth Walker for me. He's going to be.
I would say Nick Chubb's pretty good.
I would say so. The thing is, he probably will catch a little bit more passes than Nick Chubb does, which is, I mean, if Nick Chubb would have ever caught passes, he would have been the RB1. He just doesn't catch passes.
Nick Chubb is, at least for real life, he's always been arguably just the best running back. Not for fantasy, but the best pure running back in football.
Yeah. And I think Kenneth Walker will be in that argument because he's going to be one of the best pure rushers in the league. Yeah. And on top of that, he plays for a coach in Pete Carroll that prefers to run the ball than to throw the ball 45 times. That's not the kind of team that the Seahawks are. So they're going to establish the run. There's going to be other guys involved. It's not just going to be Kenneth Walker getting 30 carries every game. There will be other guys there, DJ Dallas, fill in the blank. But Kenneth Walker will give you like 15 to 20 carries every single week. And because he's such an efficient rusher, he's probably going to average like 80 yards rushing a game. And then whatever he gives you in the passing game is just going to be a bonus. And he's just going to be really safe. He's probably not going to give you the ceiling that some of these other guys will ever give you. And that's the thing with Nick Chubb. He's not going to give you RB1 seasons. I don't expect Kenneth Walker to ever be the RB1 in fantasy football, but I expect him to be between like the RB4 and the RB8 every single year.
They're not going to give you many of the 30-plus point games. They'll give you the oddball game where they score 3 touchdowns or something like that. But you can consistently count on them between 15 and 20 points every single week, in and out. Yeah.
So Kenneth Walker, and he's young too. He's only 22 years old. He's basically, if you could reset the clock on Nick Chubb, that's where we're at with Kenneth Walker. That lands us at the RB4.
Yep.
At 5, we've got the first guy you could consider old. We got Christian McCaffrey, who's going to be in the argument for the number 1 overall pick next year. And I guess where you have to like parse this out when you're doing these ranks is, are you going to weigh heavily into fantasy points right now or potential plus fantasy points right now? So some of these guys like Walker, Brees, Bijan, they're not necessarily scoring as many fantasy points at this very moment as McCaffrey is. And so you kind of have to figure out like, where does McCaffrey slot in? For us, it's 5. Come on, it's Christian McCaffrey. We know what we're getting with Christian McCaffrey. There are a couple worries here, though. Obviously, he was incredible last year. He was just an elite pass catcher in the 49ers offense. The offense is going to hum. They're going to win a lot of games. They're going to be really good. They're going to have positive game scripts. McCaffrey is going to probably be the linchpin to the offense week in, week out. But Ben, there's one reason why he might not finish as the RB1 overall, and that's going to be a minor red flag for him going forward.
Yeah. That is Elijah Mitchell. This is not to say that Elijah Mitchell is ever going to start over Christian McCaffrey. It's the reason we put him at 5 instead of 4, though, because obviously Christian was the bona fide starter. He was good in games where Elijah Mitchell played. However, Elijah Mitchell did make a significant difference where he did take Christian McCaffrey's ceiling away. Instead of scoring 28, 30 points, he was getting, 14, 13, 15 kind of points. So I do think that the trade to San Francisco actually is better for Christian's career overall, because if he was in Carolina, I think you and I both probably have him actually lower on this list, probably closer to 7 or 8. But with him being in San Francisco, that's great. I expect Elijah Mitchell to miss some games because it's Elijah Mitchell. That's what he does. He's made of glass. But when he does play, you are going to notice a difference in Christian McCaffrey.
Yeah, I think the difference this past season was to the tune of like 27 fantasy points a game when Mitchell was out and like 14.5 when Mitchell played.
That's a big difference. He's not putting up quarterback numbers. He's putting up Kenneth Walker numbers.
It's a lot. So obviously 14.5 is still very good, but it's not like RB1 overall stuff. 27 is like runaway RB1 That's dumb.
He's outscoring quarterbacks at that point.
Yes, that is like the RB1 the past 2 years has averaged, I think it's like 21 fantasy points per game, Eckler and Taylor. So 27, that's a runaway RB1.
That's 2019 Christian McCaffrey numbers.
Right. So you gotta figure out where you land with that. I think he's probably going to be, for a whole season, he's probably going to average like 17 to 20 points per game, I would imagine. But yeah, what is he, 26 right now?
Yeah, he's 26. He'll be 27 next year, I think.
Yeah, so I still think you're going to get 3 years, 2 to 3 years
I think
top 5.
Yeah, moving to
Christian
San Francisco added 2 years to his career. Like
I
2
think
good
so
years.
too. I mean, they invested in him where Carolina, they're not really going to rebuild per se, but, obviously they traded away their best player. So I think with the 49ers, that extended his career by a couple of years. They invested in him. I could see 2 to 3 years of really, really elite production. He doesn't run the ball. I mean, it's like Eckler, he's not going to get. Yeah, he doesn't get the same wear and tear on his body that some of these bell cow guys do. So I think his career could last a bit longer. Frankly, because of these injuries, he just doesn't have the same wear and tear as other guys in his same draft class do. So yeah, I think he's the outlier of these established guys that are already kind of perennial top 5 finishers.
Yeah.
At 6, we got Travis Etienne.
Argument could be made for him to be higher.
You could.
I
won't make that argument.
Yeah, I'm not going to make it. I think this is. We both have him at 6 when we made our individual lists.
I think I had him at 7, but roughly the same spot.
Yeah,
he had a stretch this past year where he was incredible. And just like he was one of the most efficient rushers in football this past year, which was something that I didn't personally see coming. I thought he was going to get all his work as a pass catcher.
Yeah, I mean, he was good as a pass catcher. He didn't really do that much.
Yeah, he had 45 targets this past year, which is not – I was hoping for like a 75, 80 target kind of guy.
That's Jonathan Taylor numbers. Like I expect better out of a pass-catching running back.
Yeah, and so – he got his first, I think it's his first start in week 5, I believe. But he didn't hit 80%.
I think his first start was week 6, I think, because they traded James Robinson then. But he had a good week 5 because it was the Houston Texans.
Fair enough. He didn't clear 70% of snaps until week 7. So he, wasn't super ideal in terms of actually getting production. And then at the end of the year against Houston, they played like a quarter or something before they sat their starters. So he finishes with 1,125 rushing yards, 5 touchdowns, and then 35 catches for 316 yards. So I think
there was a brief stretch. People were arguing him as the one Dynasty RB1. I don't think we were ever there, but I could see where you were coming from, I guess.
Yeah. I didn't quite ever get there just because it felt like he wasn't as dominant as you would want that guy to be. And I
mean, he was for, 3-week stretch, probably averaging 25, 27 points a game. Right. Really inconsistent after that. But for about 4 weeks, he was winning weeks.
I think with the Jaguars, that offense is going to improve as Trevor Lawrence improves, as they get their pass catchers up and going. I think you'll probably see Calvin Ridley play with them next year. I would imagine that offense will be better, and therefore Travis Etienne is going to have more opportunities to score. He only had 5 touchdowns. That's not ideal. The thing with him that sort of scares me is that pass catching. For a player like that, to get 45 targets, for you to finish in that upper echelon for fantasy, you've got to really be getting 1,400 yards rushing and like 10 touchdowns for those 45 targets to be okay. If you're going to get 1,200 yards, you probably need to also get 65, 70 targets as well to be an elite fantasy player. And that could happen, but I'm I'm not 100% sure it'll happen. So, he's at like 6 or 7 for me.
And it really wasn't a big issue this year, and it hopefully never is. But he does feel small to me. I don't know if you agree, but he doesn't look built to handle 200 carries a season.
I mean, I think he's 6 foot 210, 215.
He's like 5'11". It says 215, but I don't know if I believe that. Like that's 215 after a week of eating a lot of heavy eating.
He's kind of on that fringe in the BMI. I want to say last year when we were kind of looking at this, that he was right on that edge in the BMI where you felt okay about him. But he's a long strider. He's a little lankier maybe than some other guys. He's just not, I don't know. I see what you're saying. I don't think it's as big a deal.
No, and it may not be, noting. But it's just, I don't know.
It's worth a mention. How about that?
He's still good enough to where he's on the top 6.
Yeah. 7 for us, Saquon Barkley. He's dumb, ridiculous, super talented. He had a great year this past year for the Giants. He ended up with dang near 300 carries, 1,300 yards. He gave you some pass game production as well. He was the heart and soul of the Giants offense. I imagine they're going to re-sign him. If they don't, this probably changes a little bit. But as things stand, they're a well-coached team. Saquon Barkley is the focal point of their offense. He's going to be a bell cow. He also will give you pass catching, and I would imagine his touchdowns go up as the offense improves. So I kind of think this past season was somewhat of a baseline for him. I feel like he could be a little bit better or about as good as he was this past year. I think if he scores more, gets a little bit more pass game work, that floor that he had that could sometimes be a little volatile will come up.
Yeah. He's kind of like a lot of guys on this list we mentioned, situation can improve. Like pretty much with every one of these guys in these top 2 tiers, their situation can get better. And Saquon's is one of those clear, as bad as his offense was and no wide receivers, that's going to be different this year.
Yeah. He finished as the RB5 on a really limited offense this past year.
Yeah.
So I would imagine as they add pass catchers, as they improve that offensive line, they get an extra year, they're going to get better. That offense has got to go. It's trending upward. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
We've got a tier break in tier 3. We have 8 through 12 in this final tier. At number 8, we've got Najee Harris. I think there was
Najee got a lot of hate this year.
He did. He struggled early on. It was not for lack of work. It was for lack of points. The offense was terrible. He wasn't really catching passes. They weren't scoring. And he was getting games of he'd have 20 carries, 60 yards, 2 catches for 20 yards, and he'd give you 8 fantasy points. It was like
to the point where Jake Wicks, our resident Steeler fan, traded him away in the Dynasty League.
To me.
I don't appreciate that.
He finished as the RB8 during the playoffs last year, and that offense was not very good. So I don't think he's ever going to finish probably top 3, top 4 in fantasy football, unless that offense just ascends quite a bit. But he's going to have that RB7 baseline, RB10 baseline every single year. The Steelers always have a bell cow running back. It's just kind of the DNA of that team, of Mike Tomlin and that offense. He's going to get 1 billion touches every year. And unless he gets hurt, he's going to get 1 billion touches every single year.
Yep. That's Najee Harris.
Pretty cut and dry.
Bell cow.
At number 9, we have a little bit of a disagreement, but Ben, because you're very high on this guy still, DeAndre Swift is at 9.
Yes, he is. I would argue higher.
Most people would.
Most.
You had him at what, 7 or something?
I had him at 7. Most people would disagree with me. And guess what? That's okay. Because I'm right. DeAndre Swift is awesome. He finished at the RB 15 this year. He missed 3 games. He played over 50% of snaps just twice in the last 11 games. And I could see why you would argue that's a problem, but he was still the RB 15. And he put up 2 top 5 RB weeks during those last 11 games. Obviously, he was not healthy. Jamal Williams stole all kinds of touchdowns from him. And the fact that he still he was more inconsistent. Yes, I'll give you that. And obviously there was some kind of injury, but he was still producing. If maybe not at a high level, he was still producing as a good level, and he did not kill you, but maybe once after he came back. I think he had 1 game of less than 8 points. I mean, obviously 8 points, not great, but it doesn't just bury you. And DeAndre Swift, I think with a fully healthy offseason, okay, he had twice he came under 8 points. He had 7 and 3, but every other week he was over 8 points. So is it concerning? Yes, but look at the situation he's in. Look at the way he's producing, and it's all through pass catching work, the same way that, Austin Eckler scores his points. And the fact that he had to deal with Jamal Williams, and plus the multitude of injuries, I think that speak volumes for just how good DeAndre Swift is. He is a phenomenal player in a great situation. Jamal Williams is very possible he has a different home this year. The offense is still great. The offensive line is awesome, and they know how to disperse the ball to all their playmakers. So I think his situation can get better, and if he's healthy, he's going to be incredible.
So for me, I have a little bit of a different view about DeAndre Swift personally. I do still think he's a really talented player, and I do appreciate the pass catching. Jamal Williams terrifies me. He led the league in touchdowns this past year, and I think the Lions are going to re-sign him because I don't think he's going to demand a ton of money, I guess proportionate to his production this past year. And if Jamal Williams is back, I'm not in on DeAndre Swift in any shape or form. I think the linchpin for me is Jamal Williams has to go away before I'm willing to be okay with DeAndre Swift being on this list. There's also the other elephant in the room here. I'm seeing a lot of guys, Daniel Jeremiah, Todd McShay, mocking Bijan Robinson to the Lions. And if that happens,
that makes no sense.
I don't know. Some of this is, I don't know exactly how the Lions organization views DeAndre Swift. And it could be the sort of situation, potentially kind of like James Robinson for a couple of years ago when the organization decides to draft an elite running back prospect. They bring in Travis Etienne, and then James Robinson, obviously he wasn't as talented as Swift, but his career went down the toilet really quickly. So Swift terrifies me. He's not healthy.
It's different though, because Swift has 2nd-round draft capital. That's a high pick they used on him. So it's a lot harder to get rid of him.
He definitely does. But I think with him, you got 2 straight seasons where, I mean, they can't rely on him as their number 1 running back. They've had to use other guys to supplement to keep him healthy. They can't give him a full workload because he can't stay healthy. So for Swift, I think I need to see it more. I just need to see a full season, play like 14 games, and don't get limited to like 5 touches in half your games. I mean, he's playing like 30% of snaps every week, and Jamal Williams is getting all the goal line touches. That's not ideal. Granted, DeAndre Swift, he's still incredibly talented, and so he makes the most of the touches they do give him. He's really good when he touches the ball, but the problem is he's not touching the ball enough, and it's because he's not staying healthy.
Too. So he's still very young.
He is very young. He's a great player. He's just not on the field enough. They don't give him enough touches. When he's supposedly healthy, he's getting like 11 touches a game. That's not going to do it. You got to get like 15 to 20 touches per week for him to be an RB1. And, until I see that happen, I'm not there. For me, he's on the outside. I think I've got him at RB12 in Dynasty. So I still reserve the right for him to be moved up in the future.
You don't get to reserve anything. You're either in now or you're out.
I'm already out. I've traded him away wherever I've had him, and I've cashed in. So I'm feeling all right. I cashed in when he was, Dynasty RB3, and even his biggest truther has him at 7. So I think there's question marks with DeAndre Swift. You're not a moron.
But I believe.
All right. At number 10, we got Austin Eckler. This is where you gotta measure current production versus future value.
This is truly the biggest wild card on the list, I think.
He could, because of, you sort of just have to weigh this. For the next 2 years, when he's probably going to be an RB1 overall or in that top 3 kind of conversation, do you want those 2 years or 1 year, depending on how their off seasons go? Do you want that, or do you want 5 years of fill in the blank? Ramondre Stevenson comes to mind. A couple of the other guys on this list come to mind as well. Do you want 4 or 5 years of them, or 1-2 year of Eckler?
I think the only year you even have is maybe 1 for sure. I think Austin Eckler will be great next year, but this is his last year under contract in LA. So I'm just not sold. Like, he's going to have to re-sign there, and I don't know if they do that, especially given their cap situation this year. I don't see how they can logic out keeping a 28, 29-year-old running back next year. I think he could still have a long career if he, goes into a third down role and kind of stays there. I think he'll have value for a while, but his great seasons, he's maybe got 1, I think.
I sort of agree with you. And so where I've had Eckler, I've moved off him. Because I think now in Dynasty, it's the time to move away from Austin Eckler. So he's in our top 10, but I think he's a massive screaming sell. I'm not even sure that
his sell was last year. Yeah,
it probably was, but because he one-upped himself, it kind of left that window open a little bit to where people were still like, okay, he's going to be a top 3 pick next year. Let me go buy him. He's going to be really good. And you're probably not wrong. He's probably going to be incredible next year. But the questions are sort of when
this is the last year of betting. Yes, probably. After this year, I'm not touching him.
Yeah. At 11, we've got Javonte Williams. And I'll be totally honest with you. He's only at 11 because of his injury.
Are you saying he should be higher kind of thing? Is that what you're meaning?
I'm saying when he's healthy, when we're not worried about his knee, he's a lot closer to Saquon Barkley than he is.
Oh, I've been high on Javonte since his rookie year, but he'd probably be very close to the top 5, if not in it, if he hadn't been injured, especially now that Sean Payton is there.
Yeah. So the through line here with Javonte Williams is Sean Payton. Sean Payton's, he builds his offense through the run game. If you go look at like team rushing totals in New Orleans when Sean Payton was the coach there, year in and year out, they're like a top 5 rushing team in the NFL. It's not just Alvin Kamara that's been great for fantasy there in New Orleans. It's been Reggie Bush. It was Mark Ingram. Didn't they have like Deuce McAllister at one point, and he was really good for them years ago, something like that?
I think so.
That name sounds right.
But
I don't even know.
For the past 6 years, though, you've seen what Kamara has done with him, and he's been incredible. And Javonte draws some comps to Alvin Kamara with the contact balance, and he's shown he's a very reliable receiver too.
Yeah, Javonte Williams, I think, is an incredible rusher. And, obviously this past year, the few games that he played before he was injured, he didn't flash the way you would hope.
The entire Broncos offense didn't flash the way you'd hoped.
Exactly. So I think there's something to be said for the fact that the offense was just objectively horrible, and Javonte didn't get to pop. But even still, he was solid. He gave you a decent baseline. He was the best player on the offense before he got hurt. Didn't mean he was incredible, but then he got hurt, and obviously the rest was history. With Javonte, he's one of the best players in the NFL at breaking tackles. When we're talking about Bijan breaking a bunch of tackles per rush, that's Javonte. Javonte is
this
the
dude can
NFL's
carry a
equivalent.
defense.
He's ridiculous. And so I think Javonte has a bright future ahead of him with Sean Payton as his coach. I think the offense bounces back. A lot of that is due to me trusting that Sean Payton will figure it out. But just in case you were a little worried, to kind of further this point that Javonte is an incredible player on a per-touch basis, his rookie year, before the injury, he was top 10 in the NFL in juke rate, yards created per touch, and evaded tackles in his rookie year, which just means he doesn't necessarily need an elite offensive line to be great. He's making stuff happen by himself. And, it's a la Saquon Barkley. He's juking people out when they're catching him in the backfield. He's running through arm tackles. He's a great player. He also gives you pass catching too. I think Javonte's got a really bright future. So for now, we've got him at 11.
He'll jump up higher, assuming he flashes this year. The only problem is his injury was so similar to J.K. Dobbins, almost the exact same injury. And it has taken Dobbins way longer than you were hoping it would to get back. So once he is back, I've got no questions, but the timeline is going to be the issue.
Yeah, I do think it's going to probably be a little rocky. I almost hesitate to say this upcoming year with the knee injury. I just don't know how well he's going to bounce back from it. I think the year after that, though, when he gets a full year removed from that injury, he's going to be incredible. So you kind of have to wait a little bit for this one to come true. I don't know that you're going to
rebuild target.
Yeah, rebuild target for sure. For sure. Number 12, final guy in our top 12. He is another rookie.
One of my favorite rookies.
Jahmyr Gibbs.
Big Jahmyr Gibbs fan.
He's incredible. He's really good.
He would be higher on this list too. I just don't think Bijan's in tier 1 because I think Bijan, plain simple, he's bulletproof. I don't think there's a landing spot Bijan can go to where I don't see him being fantastic. Yeah. Gibbs is a little bit different. There's a few spots he can go to where I don't really want him.
What are those spots?
I don't know. Like, say he goes to the Patriots.
That would not be ideal.
Do not want it. Even like it sounds great on paper, but like if he goes somewhere like Buffalo, I
wouldn't like that.
I'm not interested there. But there's also situations where I think he would be fantastic. So,
yeah,
if he goes somewhere like Philly, I'm all in on him. If he goes to Philadelphia,
Miami
would be incredible.
Good Lord. Honestly, even Arizona, I don't know why they would draft a running back.
That'd be great.
But, that would be incredible.
It's the last thing they need to worry about. But.
They don't need that. But Jahmyr Gibbs is an elite pass catching prospect. It's stupid how good of a pass catcher he was in college as a running back. These numbers just don't happen in a 12-game sample in college football.
No.
He gave you 35 and 44 catches his last 2 years in college. Keep in mind, he didn't play his entire career at Alabama. He also played at Georgia Tech before he went to Alabama. Just a quick side note here. For those of you that do not watch ACC football or Georgia Tech football, they're garbage. They're absolutely horrible.
They're a laughing stock of a bad conference.
They're not good at all. So when he transferred to Alabama a year ago, it was like, oh, good. We're finally going to get to see this guy.
There were people saying this guy could win the Heisman at Alabama.
Yeah. And frankly, he didn't get Heisman cred, but he gave you 1,500 yards total. He had 900 yards rushing in Alabama, and he also had 400 plus yards receiving. He was incredible. He was number 1 in rookie running backs. He had 400 plus yards receiving. He was great. He also had 6.1 yards per attempt his last year at Alabama, and then 5.2 yards per attempt his last 2 years at Georgia Tech. Keep in mind, Georgia Tech.
Correct me if I'm wrong. I think that's better than Najee Harris at Alabama.
Yeah, it was.
I know we're beating a dead horse. Every time you watched him in college, somebody said it. Every time people talk about him in the draft process, people say it. But my gosh, he looks like Alvin Kamara.
He really does. He like the thing with him is he doesn't just run like swing out routes like normal running backs. They line him up in the slot. Like at points this year, I kid you not, Jahmyr Gibbs was their best pass catcher. And they have 5-star wide receivers.
Like, times they had to, 2-minute drills and stuff like that. They would treat him like Austin Eckler or somebody like that, like just dump it off to him like 6 times.
Yeah, and he's just making stuff happen. Like the way he can decelerate and break a guy down in the second level is like, it's ridiculous. The way he makes guys miss, he'll be dumb.
I think he'll be faster than Bijan Robinson.
I agree. Yeah, I think he's probably going to run like a 4.35, 4.40, something like that.
Yeah,
he's going to be
quick.
He's going to be real quick. I think he is quicker than fast. I don't know if he's got long speed. Not like
biggest only knock on him. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I just don't see like Kenneth Walker and Breece Hall a year ago to me had better long speed than Gibbs does this year, but I think he's quicker and shiftier than both of those guys were personally. That's what I see.
Only knock is he's not 220 pounds like Bijan. I'll be surprised if he's 210.
He's not. Well, he will be 210. So
he's gonna beef up, but
so I'm gonna just pull it straight from.
I think they got him listed at 200 right now.
They got him listed at 5'11", 200. I think he's probably going to weigh in at 210. His BMI is going to be slightly questionable. He's currently got a 28 BMI.
It'll be like ETN where, he's 215, but he's not 215.
I think he's probably going to be similar to ETN in body composition to where you're not like, this dude should not be getting 30 carries a game, but he could give you 15 and be fine. I think that's what you're going to get with Gibbs.
15 carries and then 5 to 6 targets. Yeah, I'll take it.
Yeah, I genuinely think the dude's floor is like Rachaad White. And I think a lot of people are excited
wetting themselves over Rachaad White.
Yeah, I think that is the worst possible case scenario. That's like if everything goes wrong, Jahmyr Gibbs is Rachaad White. Best case scenario, AK-47.
Yep.
He's exciting. A couple other guys to mention here. They didn't quite crack our top 12, but they're in that just outside looking in conversation. Josh Jacobs, Tony Pollard, Ramondre Stevenson. Go through quickly here. Just give me a couple reasons why you should be looking at these guys.
Yeah, Josh Jacobs, surprisingly, he is still 24. He'll be 25 next season. So he's way, way younger than I think a lot of people realize. Obviously, where he goes will be a big deal. I wouldn't be surprised if the Raiders bring him back. It's 50-50 for me. Wouldn't be surprised if they let him walk either. So landing spot will be a big deal. However, I still think he's got, a lot of juice left. He just showed you his ceiling, and his ceiling is really good. He's always been a great player. It's just, been the way the Raiders use him. He has had some minor injuries in the past, which has, slowed him down here and there, but he is great. And yeah, I think if he comes back to the Raiders, he's got multiple really good years left.
Yeah, for sure. He hadn't really had the explosiveness in the past years that he had this past year when he just, he had like 40.
He was playing for a contract and got it.
Yeah, he earned himself a lot of money this past year. Pollard as well. I think he also earned himself a bunch of money. He was so unbelievably efficient on a per touch basis. Some of that is probably due to the fact that Zeke was just pounding people up the middle. And then Pollard would get those outside zones, those stretches, those tosses, and he was taking them 40, 50 yards.
He got the juice.
He did break his leg, and he's about to be 26. So those things are.
But he doesn't have the wear and tear that other 26-year-old running backs have either.
He does not. He's not gotten a lot of wear on those tires. And I do think if you are looking for Pollard, you hope they bring him back to Dallas. I think that's probably his best case scenario, just because as Zeke gets older, they can give Pollard more work. I think where Pollard gets a little scary is if he goes somewhere else and you're kind of dealing with a bit of an unknown. He is an unrestricted free agent, so he can go anywhere. And that's a little scary for me.
Yeah.
Last guy here worth mentioning, Ramondre Stevenson.
You like him more than I do, but he's fine. He's great.
I think with him, he's intriguing because he's huge, absolutely enormous.
Big man.
And he also caught a crap load of passes this past year. Mac Jones is their quarterback. There's going to be pass catching to get in this offense as a running back. I think the only thing, people are always scared of the Patriots running backs, and for good reason. They just don't care the way we do
about
the running back position. I think Damian Harris is gone, and I think Ramondre played well enough this past year that old Bill Belichick is going to feature him. Actually, I think you'll see him get 200-plus carries. And I think you'll also see him probably get like 60-plus targets. And I think because of that offense, it's just never terrible. There's going to be scoring opportunities. I think Ramondre is probably going to be top 12-ish running back next year, unless they do something dumb and go draft a running back in the second or third round, like Sean Tucker, Zach Charbonnet, whoever, what have you. That would scare me. But as things sit right now, Ramondre Stevenson, I'm very excited about it.
Yep. I'm really excited just as a whole to see the running back landscape going into this year and going out, because I feel like there's going to be a massive amount of turnover this time, because we're seeing the great class of 2017. Their time is about up, and this is an incredible class in 2023 coming in, not to mention notable free agents like Miles Sanders, who's really good. You've got Josh Jacobs. You've got Barkley, even though I think he re-signs. You've got Tony Pollard out there, guys who legitimately are fantastic starters. With the addition of the rookie class, is going to be really interesting to watch.
Yeah, and I don't think people realize just how impactful this rookie class will be on the NFL. Like, I don't know that all of these guys will be fantasy difference makers, but I think they'll be NFL difference makers.
Yeah,
you're probably
even the other guys, Charbonnet,
yeah, I think you're looking at you're probably looking at like 6 or 7 guys that are making impacts on NFL rosters. Not just like, Isaiah Spiller last year, he got some hype. He was intriguing, and then the Chargers drafted him, and he never saw the field.
He'll be real threats to the incumbents. Maybe not to be the starter, but they will take workload away.
Yeah, you're looking at Bijan Robinson, Jahmyr Gibbs, Sean Tucker, Zach Evans,
they're going to be
Zach Charbonnet,
starters.
Devin Achane, Tank Bigsby, Tyjae Spears. All of those guys, I think, will make an impact at a minimum wherever they get drafted. So I don't know that they're going to be like. I don't know that all of them will be the number one guy in their backfield, but I think they'll all make whoever's in that backfield worth a whole lot less.
And Bijan and Gibbs are probably the only two that come in and are instant starters, but the other guys are probably 1 to 2 years from being the guy in their backfield. So,
or by the end of next year, they could take over a backfield. I think there's a couple guys in that situation as well, where they could come in and maybe there's not like an elite player there already, and they work their way in and they end up becoming a starter by the end of the year.
Does Tony Pollard leave? Somebody goes to Dallas, or does somebody end up in Minnesota, or the Packers, somewhere like that?
Minnesota drafting somebody. Yeah, I think there's going to be a lot of guys that are making life uncomfortable for some starting NFL running backs right now. So, yeah. I think that's all we got there.
That was good.
That was a good one. I like that. If you enjoyed the episode, check us out on Instagram at @FantasyBrothers_. You can find us on Twitter at @FantasyBros_. On Patreon, you can find us there at FantasyBros or patreon.com/FantasyBrothers. You'll want to keep an eyeball out on the Patreon, because we are going to be releasing our draft kit, the rookie kit, on Patreon. So you want to keep an eyeball on that.
We only did top 12 here. I think we'll have our full list of guys on Patreon probably. Same thing with quarterbacks, wide receivers, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, we're going to be having player comps. We're going to have basically Superflex, one quarterback, mock drafts. You're going to get a chance to kind of learn some more about these players. We'll give you player comps in there, what we think the trajectory for all these players actually is. So keep an eye out for that. That should be coming here in the next few weeks. And that'll do it from us. We'll see you in the next episode.
Peace.
Thank you for listening to the Fantasy Brothers podcast. If you enjoyed the episode and want to connect to us, follow us on Instagram at @FantasyBrothers_ or on Twitter at @FantasyBros_. If you want to support the show, you can do that at Patreon /Fantasy Brothers.